Hey Home Talks, today for your notes at home you're going to be talking about domain and range. Alright, go ahead and title this page in your notes Domain and Range and enter in your essential question there. Your three vocabulary terms are functions, domain, range. Make sure you pause your video so you get enough time to write this all down.
And you'll notice under domain that links to input, what goes into the function, and the range links to the output. For science, this would be like the independent and the dependent variable.
First thing we need to do is we need to be able to say if ordered pairs, table, or these input-output maps are functions, meaning does one input 0 have one output 2? Yep. Does one input 1 have one output 4? Does input 2 have one output? No, it has a 6 and a 7, so this is not a function. All right, let's go ahead and look at this one. Our inputs are -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Each one has exactly one input with exactly one output, so this is a yes. Let's go ahead and look at this with a map. 2 only has one output. 4 has two outputs, making it a no.
Now when we look at graphs, you'll see that the x value in that first graph, 1 has one output, 4. 2 has one output, 4. But when you get over to 4, you'll see it has two y values, a 1 and a 3. Those 2 points are vertically aligned one above the other, so you can tell that this is not a function. One input, in this case 4, has two outputs. Looking over at the next graph, we see a linear function, and for each input, there's only one output. Even though they're all linked together so close, all of those points, there's no single point directly on top of another point. And this is why all linear functions, linear equations are functions except for vertical lines. This line's not vertical, so it's a function. Here are two more graphs. These are both functions, and now they're asking for the domain and range. Perhaps the easiest way to do this is to turn those points into ordered pairs, and then to take the x values of each of the ordered pairs and list that as your domain. Take the y values and list that as your range. So we have -3, -3, -3, -1, I'm sorry, -1, -3, 1, -3, and 3, -3. Now we look at those x values, all the inputs, and that's the domain. For the outputs, we can see that the range is simply -3. You don't have to list the -3 more than one time. Here you can see the 4 values of the domain and the 1 value of the range, -3. In the next graph, again, we can make ordered pairs, -2, 4, -1, 2, 1, 2, and 2, 4. Now it's time to look at the x values for domain, and you can see there are 4 of them. And for the range, simply 2 and 4. You don't have to repeat those. Those are the inputs and the outputs, the domain and the range. Now we're going to look at domain and range as a part of a word problem or a descriptive problem. And in the first one, we have an equation that links y avocados against x batches of guacamole. We need to identify the independent and dependent variables. Okay, the x is always the independent variable, and in this case, that would be batches of guacamole. Y is the dependent variable, and this is the number of avocados you have left after making those batches. For this problem, we have 0, 1, 2, and 3 as the domain, and that would be 0, 1, 2, or 3 batches. And let's use the equation to find the range. When the domain is 0, the range is 14. when the domain is 1, the range is 10. When it's 2, the range is 6. And when it's 3, the range is 2. In each case here, we just plugged in that independent variable x to find out what y is. In problem number 4, we have a table that links the independent variable days after March 24th, 2015, and percentage of moon. This is written in decimal form. So it says interpret the domain and range. This is not difficult to do. You just look at the x values, and the domain is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the 5 inputs for the problem. The range are the corresponding 5 outputs, 19, 29, and so forth. Those are the percentages. When it asks in part B, what percent of the moon was visible on March 28th, you have to count how many days after the March 24th. And we see that that is 4 days after March 24th, and so the range must be 0.59.
Sorry, the interpretation just requires some more words.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. 19%.
Exactly. The range there would be 19% visible, 29% visible, and so forth. This links the number you see in the table to the description of it in the words above.
Words.
Yes. Percentage of moon visible for each day after the 24th of March.
All right, guys, here are 2 problems that we would like you to try on your own. Go ahead and pause your video, replay it when you're ready to go over your answer. You should have that the domain for the first one is -1, 0, 1, 2. The range is -3, -1, 1, and 3. And then you're all perfectly good at reading, so go ahead and check your answers for number 2. The last thing you need to do for homework tonight is, the last 2 things, is answer your essential question, and then go take that checkpoint on domain and range that's listed underneath this in your Schoology account. All right, have a good night, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.